Hello, everyone. I'm Eric D'Souza, and joining me today on the Crime Writers of Canada podcast, we're going to be talking to the 2025 Derrick Murdoch recipient, William Deverell. Hi, William. How are you?
I'm doing okay, and I am kind of getting a little bit used to not working right now because I've had so many complicated problems, such as uh, losing my iPhone and during a holiday in Costa Rica. That's been driving me crazy, but I'm going to start working on my work in progress in a couple of days. I promise that to
Now,
myself.
I'm already wondering, is this going to happen to Arthur?
Well, Arthur's going to be in real trouble, I'm afraid,
But
uh,
is it,
in my work in progress. Uh, it's more of a humorous book than you couldn't call it a thriller.
mm,
But he gets in a lot of trouble on he's taking a holiday in Costa Rica and gets in one jam after another, and it's going to be. Probably my funniest book that I've written. I've got a couple of books that were shortlisted for humor, but this one is I'm having a great time doing it. I'm laughing at myself.
too much fun.
Yeah.
You've already ruined my first question for you, but before we get too far ahead, let me start with a bio and let's talk about the Derrick Murdoch Award. So, the Derrick Murdoch Award is a special achievement awarded presented at the discretion of the Board Chair of Crime Writers of Canada. It recognizes the individuals who have made significant contributions to developing crime writing in Canada. A little bit about you. Um, I found in a I bridged your bio from the Crime Writers of Canada website. I refer everyone to that to read more, but I want to keep it short. So Williams' biography includes 21 novels, many drawing from his extensive legal experience. Notable works include Trial of Passion, which earned the Dashiell Hammett Prize for Literary Excellence in Crime Writing in 1997, and the Crime Writers of Canada's Arthur Ellis Award for Best Crime Canadian Novel in 1998. Trial of Passion introduced readers to Arthur Beauchamp, a character who is a central series that includes titles such as April Fools, which won the 2003 Arthur Ellis Award, and one of my favorites, the book Stung. Beyond his writing, he continues to be a pivotal figure in the Canadian literature, inspiring readers and mentoring emerging Canadian writers within the crime of mystery genres. So sorry, Bill, you had to sit through that, but let's get to the interview. So this is not the first time you and I chatted. If anybody would like to hear our original version or our original discussion, you can find it on the Crime Writers of Canada podcast, June 6, 2024. It's not too hard to find. In that interview, we talked about the long shot trial, and I mentioned, or you mentioned, that you just received a New York Times review that said you were getting a little too old to write. So you've already started to answer my question. I know you're working on something, so tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, it's more of a kind of uh, jokey book. I was. Although I'm supposed to be a crime writer, a lot of my books are simply just very lighthearted and funny, and I like to have a side story in every one of my books. Um, First of all, is the main story. It usually involves a trial, and then I have a bunch of kind of characters on my mythical island called Garibaldi Island, and we have fun with those. And so I'm a kind of a not I'm not your usual crime writer, frankly. I just enjoy having a laugh or two every once in a while and include those in my books, and it doesn't seem to work because I have a lot of fans who are more interested in the humor than the thrills. And it's not. I don't think there are very many authors who are supposed to be crime writers who inject as much humor as I do in my books.
I think you're inspiring some crime writers to put more humor in their books because I can think of a few like Jonathan Whitelaw, AJ Devlin. They infuse a lot of humor in. So maybe you're the influence, and I'll ask them one day if they're a fan of yours because I can see it.
Well, um, it is writing humor is more fun than any other aspect of composition. I, ever since I was just even a kid, I remember back in my teen years, and I would write little funny gems, little stories and whatnot all the time, and from my high school journal, that sort of thing. And I never really thought I would be basically a crime writer, um, uh, and I thought I would be more of a humorist, but I'm putting all that together and mixing it together.
I'm going to tell everyone now. We just gave you the award, and I was lucky enough to be there. And you gave an acceptance speech, and you actually read from those journals, and you had us all laughing. I'm going to attach that to after this interview. So if anybody stick around after the interview, I'm going to also include the acceptance speech where I think we laughed constantly. So
Yeah, well, I was reading at that event from when I was in my mid-teens, like 15 or 16, and I found an old diary that I'd written a few I don't know events that had nothing to do with humor. I thought at the time, but apparently it was funny as hell because they were all laughing at the event. So
I was one of them. I had a technical issue, and I don't have the beginning of it, but there was laughs abound, even if
yeah,
you weren't planning on it. Um, a fellow Canadian author, Gail Bowen, told me that she was going to retire Joan Kilbourne series, and she's in the 20s of how many books
yes,
she's written of that. I don't know if I fully believe it, but she says she's going to. She's not retiring from writing, but she's just retiring the series to write about something different. I don't want to encourage you to do the same, but are you ever tempted to retire, Arthur? Because you've led us to
I
believe you might.
there's too much demand to uh, I mean, all my last about 8, 9, 10 books are Arthur Beecham's, and I know that I would get um, a rousing kind of what are you thinking of when you're when you we want Arthur Beecham, and so I'm pretty well stuck with him. He's a very popular figure, and I I might, as I have done in several books, lower his importance in the book. Like Stung, he's one of 3 or 4 protagonists in that book, for instance. Um, but in the work in progress, it's all told from his own point of view completely.
Partially, I bring it up because you're the one who led to it. At the end of Stung, he says he's retired, right? Um, and then long shot, you took the strategic point of writing a prequel, which you could always do again. But I was reading the back of your book again from Stung, and just the timing is perfect. Sometimes timing is
Yeah.
perfect because you have a blurb here from somebody you don't normally get a blurb from, Elizabeth May. And if by any chance Elizabeth May is listening to this, congratulations on winning your seat again. I was very happy to hear it. But I'm going to read her blurb, and I'm going to agree with her. Arthur Beauchamp fans will not be disappointed as William Deverell takes us on another romp through politics, eco-saboteurs, and all things green. This time he adds a great character in Ruby Levetsky, a first-class page turner. And I'm with Elizabeth, and then I loved Rivy. Just loved her. And I thought, am I gonna see any more of her?
Well, there you go. I have also got a lot of pressure from fans who want to see more of her. Unfortunately for them, the current book I'm working on does not have any scenes with Rivi Levitsky, but I might be, should I survive long enough to make her the real protagonist of another book. And I have in mind that she would be a young lawyer. She got a degree, and she gets herself in some difficulties over that because she's the kind of heroine who creates difficulties for herself. So that is on my sort of bucket list for writing of recreating her one more time.
I'm very glad to hear it because I can see it as like a mentorship. Like you've mentored so many writers, I can see Arthur mentoring her. So that's what I'm hoping for. Um, Before I leave her too much, I was wondering about your side of it. Um, did you find it difficult writing a young person?
Not really, because I've done that with other books too. Like not Slander is an example, for instance, an older book of mine, and it is all told in not only for a young person, a young lawyer, a woman. And I had no problem with that. I was surprised myself. But what in cases of like Stung and Slander, where I feature young lawyers, I am the protagonist because I went through a lot of that. I went through um, I had, I was a kind of a nuisance in a courtroom when I was a young lawyer. I got tied up with problems with various judges and whatnot, and that there were a lot of stories that um, evolved during the course of my young years as a lawyer, and a lot of them have made their way into my various novels.
In your acceptance speech, you made a reference to your first book, uh, Needles, first published book at least. Uh, do you ever go back and read your early stuff and like, oh, I could have done this better, or do you just let it be?
Well, I have only done that once, and that would be Platinum Blues, which is one of my early books, about three or four, uh, or maybe fourth book I wrote. And my partner read it, and she was a little bit unhappy with it, and I couldn't find out what was wrong with it. And so I just read it all over completely and persuaded her that it was a great book. But that was only because I've never heard anyone complain about any of my books, and she's the love of my life, so I had to straighten her out.
I find wives are the hardest critics, so I'm glad it's not just me. Um, it's a hard question, perhaps, but do you have a favorite of one of your books?
I I change around from time to time as and I think Stung would be a favorite. I had I'll See You in My Dreams. I really thought that was one of my better books. And I guess the um, Snow Job, which is one of my funniest books, I think that that would be in the list. And I would think that I was. I should say Slander. I actually did reread it because I'm involved in a film version of that, and so I've written a couple of episodes for it. But that was surprisingly one of my most popular novels, and it was pre Arthur Beauchamp.
Wow, that's very exciting. I didn't know you had something in screen again, returning to the screen.
Yeah, a bit, and it's slow moving, but it's poking along.
That is great to hear. I guess it's a little bit of a change in direction. Um, I think I get this from a few authors, especially authors of your caliber. We sometimes don't like hearing that in the current landscape, there's sort of literature up here and then genre fiction. And crime novels sort of fit in here. Do you take offense to that or do you accept the way it is?
I have no argument about it. No.
All right, well, that's an easy question then. I can ask you another one that I've asked to other people.
That's a difficult question. I gave a sort of a kind of dumb answer.
Okay, then a different question. I asked this of Jack Batten, who was the previous Derrick Murdoch recipient 2 years ago.
Yes,
He tells me a lot of stories of sort of like the 80s, where he believes that the 1980s were sort of the golden age of crime fiction in Canada. Would you agree to that, or would you say maybe it's now because there's so many big names, or
I
is it
would.
another generation?
I would say, yeah, certainly. For me, it was, and I can't speak on behalf of other writers, but Needles came out in 1979, and then for the next decade, the 1980s, I was just roaring along, and I think there was a lot of good competition from other writers during that decade.
Do you have any favorite new writers?
No, I haven't any. I have enough troubles writing my own books, so that, but I have I have a kind of I don't read a lot of crime books. I have to confess to that because
Really?
yeah, I don't know. It's just a kind of I look for books that are kind of like my books with the good dose of humor in them as well. And I have not found them uh, enough of those for me. I mean, the books I really prefer are the kinds I write. So,
As in
but
humor, or do you like the case, the
but
trial stuff?
it's assumed that any crime writer reads all sorts of crime writing, but that has not been my case. Not that I don't read them all, but I have. They have to be a really spectacular book that I would sit down and pour through the
Hmm.
pages.
Did you grow up with like Agatha Christie and the Hardy Boys?
Absolutely not. No, my no, my father wouldn't let me. He was a journalist, and he was very much into classical novels and whatnot, and he dissuaded me as I was growing up from writing popular fiction. He wasn't in favor of that, and he was a wonderful father, and he was he could read aloud. Well, not even he knew by memory, Shakespeare and the great poets Keats and Shelley and so on forth, and was I was just in awe of him, and um, he used to try to write little bits, short stories, and send them off to magazines, and none of them really sold. But he did pass away finally, and I then realized that I was beholden to his preference of kind of high literature. And once he did pass away, and it was painful, but I realized that well, write what you know. and I had been both a prosecutor and a defense lawyer for years, and I knew the underbelly of Vancouver pretty well, and I realized, why am I trying to be literary? And that worked. So when that needles came out of that.
Yeah, I know very little bit about needles, but the little I do, I don't think it's high literary.
Yeah, it's not. It's probably my most violent book of all of mine.
I am gonna have to get my hands on a copy of that book because
Oh, you should. Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
find the time for that one because even just the pitch you made during your accepted speech, I was like, "Wow, that's quite
Yeah.
the premise." That is not Arthur Beauchamp. So,
No, it was a very popular book right off the bat. So yeah.
I am going to find it. I'm sure I can.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much for taking the time, Bill. I know you're very busy, and I know you're going to get back to writing very soon.
Okay. Thank you, Eric.
And congratulations.
Thank you again.
It's always great chatting with Bill, and as promised, I'll leave the link to our previous interview where we talked about his previous book, The Lawn Shop Trial, in the notes of this video. Also, as promised, following this, we have the reception that we had at Black Bond Books on April 28th, where Crime Writers of Canada awarded Bill the distinguished Derrick Murdoch Award. It is introduced by one of his mentorees, Craig Bowlesby, and then Winona Kent awards it to Bill, and Bill gives a short speech, which, as I said, we couldn't stop laughing. I apologize, though, both to Craig and to Bill, because I was the one recording it, and I was clapping instead of hitting the recording button, so I missed the beginning of both their speeches. Sorry, guys.
Mentor for me. Back in 2016, I signed up for a class Bill was set to teach at UBC. Unfortunately, the class fell through suddenly, but I knew I needed help. So I asked UBC to contact Bill and ask if he would still be able to give me feedback on a novel, and to my surprise, he agreed. And we proceeded with a professional writer-editor relationship for about 3 years off and on. In a nutshell, I would send him about 50 pages at a time, and then he would send back his notes. Now, this was very important to me because I was really floundering when it came to fiction. I had published a lot of nonfiction, but as the people in this room know, fiction is very different. Bill was very direct and insightful, and I learned a lot. And I should say, it's one thing to know something in theory, but it's another to have an expert show you exactly why and how you are screwing up. Now, good plots and characters are, of course, essential, but with Bill, I also learned to appreciate the many pitfalls of superfluousness and awkwardness, hunting down passivity and replacing it with activeness, and just finding a way not only to do it right, but also to say what you really want to say. Bill would often say, "You can do better." And I would think, how do you know I can do better? But I guess he had some confidence in me. And he also would exhort me to use brain power. I remember that specifically. So that led me to developing a special think tank in my bathtub. Thank you, Bill. Anyway, I took his instruction to heart, and since then I published a bunch of short stories, and to my surprise, I won some awards. So thank you, Bill, for all of that.
Thank you.
And just before we have you come up, Bill, I'm going to invite Winona Kent, the Crime Writers Canada chair, to say a few words and then present the award.
Then you get to talk.
Thank you. Then you can talk. So I am here to present the Derrick Murdoch Award to one very deserving author. As Levikas said, it's issued every 2 years to recognize a member of Crime Writers of Canada who, over a period of time, has made significant contributions to the English or French crime, mystery, thriller genre in Canada. Known as the Chairman's Award when we first presented it in 1984, it was later renamed in honor of its first recipient, Derrick Murdoch, a gentleman who was considered the driving force behind the creation of Crime Writers of Canada. Among other things, Mr. Murdoch reviewed crime literature for the Globe and Mail for over 20 years. So the criteria for this award includes the following: a writing career marked by sustained excellence, a significant body of work produced over many years, writing that's been published traditionally or independently, in English or French, a recipient who has made measurable and significant contributions to the writing community, including publication, mentoring, and professional development. The awards committee was unanimous in recommending that the 2025 Derrick Murdoch Award be presented to Bill Deverell, CWC member emeritus. So just a little about Bill if you don't know. And I know I'm going to omit some details from the long list of accomplishments I was presented with, so please forgive me. William Herbert Deverell is a distinguished Canadian novelist, activist, and criminal lawyer renowned for his significant contributions to the crime and mystery genres. His debut novel, Needles, garnered the McClelland and Stewart $50,000 Seal Award in 1979, setting a precedent for his future successes. And I just want to interrupt here and throw in a little personal note. The Seal Book Award was a pioneering Canadian first novel prize, sponsored by Seal Books in Canada and Bantam in the States. It was launched in 1978 and it ran for 9 years until 1987, so Bill was the winner in the award's second year. Even back in 1979, that first prize was a phenomenal amount of money. It also came with a publishing contract. It's tricky to try and find information about the award online now, but I know that 1987 was the awards last year because that was the year I made the shortlist with my first novel, Skywatcher. And I have to honestly say it was reading about Bill's success with Needles in 1979 that completely inspired me to get Skywatcher written and entered into the contest. So thank you, Bill, for launching my career as a novelist. And thank you, Michael Slade, for you were an inspiration as well. Anyway, Bill's extensive list of publications includes 19 novels, many drawing from his legal experience. I won't name them all, but I will note that Trial of Passion won the Dashiell Hammett Prize for Literary Excellence in Crime Writing in 1997, and CWC's Arthur Ellis Award, as it was called back then, for Best Canadian Crime Novel in 1998, and April Fool won the 2003 Arthur Ellis Award. Kill All the Judges and Snow Job were shortlisted for Canada's Stephen Leacock Medal for Humor. Snow Job, a political satire, was named by Margaret Cannon of the Globe and Mail as one of the top crime books worldwide in 2009. Bill is also the author of the true crime book, A Life on Trial, The Case of Robert Frisbee, which is based on a notorious murder trial in which he was the defense counsel. And Street Legal, which you might remember on CBC TV from 87 to 94, was the longest running 1-hour scripted drama in the history of Canadian television and was based on an original series pilot called Shell Game, which Bill wrote. So Bill was a close friend of Howard Engel. Beyond his writing, Bill has been instrumental in mentoring emerging Canadian mystery writers, including Craig, who you've just heard from, and Jay Clark, Michael Slade, Vancouver criminal lawyer and crime writer who has authored 30 books as Michael Slade. So Bill was a visiting professor in the creative writing department at the UVic in 1991-92, and he served as chair of the Writers' Union in Canada twice, in 94 and 99. He's also a life member of the Writers' Guild of Canada, a member emeritus of Crime Writers of Canada, and a member of PEN International. So, without further ado, I will take this and present it to you, Bill.
Personal anecdotes, and some of them are a little bit embarrassing to me. I have to be honest with you, I never really wanted to be a lawyer. My dream was always to be a writer of fiction. And I found proof of that when I was working through my archives, and I found a mouse-nibbled old diary that when I was a teenager, and I blush to read parts of it, but does in fact prove that I preferred to be a writer than a lawyer. So this was my first entry in my diary, and it sounds like the voice of a swaggering adolescent. And the first entry, April 24th, 1954. I am feeling very dispirited today, so I decided to start a diary. A funny thing about this diary is that I hope it will be read by posterity. Someday I may shock the world into noticing me. I hope to be a great writer. Well, such splendid arrogance is the province of youth, of course. And the great writer goes on, I'm dispirited because I'm afraid I'm falling in love with a girl. I wouldn't mind that very much, except that the girl seems to be quite bored with me. Entry a few days later. Ruth, that's her name, is babysitting. I tried to phone her, but I botched it. I can't speak on the phone to girls. I'd wanted to go to the cruel sea with her. No dice. I think she's given me a gentle hint to stay away. It's about 7:30 now. I'll go to the cruel sea by myself, I'm afraid. And then a week later, it's Sunday. I've been neglecting my diary. Nothing is happening. Finished reading To Have and Have Not. Ruth refused another date. On the next page, the diary takes on a kind of staccato tone. I begin to have regrets about this diary. It is ridiculous. Passed Ruth on the street today. She was with a girlfriend. She said hi. I said, hi, Ruth. My friend Warner is trying to convince me to be bold with her, but I can't. And then following that, went to an art gallery today, student paintings. Some are all right. One of Ruth's was there. I was prejudiced and thought it was good, but my unbiased opinion is that it stinks. Here's my final entry, July 24th. I had stored my diary away just a while ago. I opened it to glean over old memories. It makes me sound like a psychopathic freak. My mind sounds unbalanced. I'd like to go out with a girl tonight. And I made another stab at a diary a year or so later. Now I am 17 years, 2 months old, and I believe I should recap my literary career. Well, if you want to move fast forward to 1979, that's the year I took a 6-month sabbatical from my law practice. My partners had a merry time scoffing at my presumption that I would somehow use those 6 months to write a novel. But I dusted off that dream, took it to Pender Island with me, with an old Remington typewriter and a box of blank paper, 3-volume Webster's Dictionary, and that slim masterpiece by Strunk and White called The Elements of Style, which advises omit needless words. My problem was that I had no words to omit. Nor would plot or character come. My intention had been to write a serious novel. God forbid I would lower myself to popular fiction. But all I managed to squeeze out were a few dribbles of descriptive prose. I stared at that Remington typewriter, memorized every bolt and spindle, began talking to it. I hiked, I biked, I scuba dived, I hung around with the locals at the bar, not realizing that many of them would ultimately appear in my novels. Weeks passed and months dragged by, and I was wondering if I was lost the use of the right side of my brain. But I said I had a kind of catharsis. I realized kind of late that, I'd been a criminal lawyer. I defended the innocent and the guilty, and prosecuted as well. I knew a lot about the underbelly of Vancouver. I knew something of the theater of the courtroom, and I was nearing 40 years old and determined to break into print with both guns blazing. I would write a thriller, and that's how Needles came to be. And I suddenly it was like a dam had been breached, and I was drowning in a torrent of my own words. And I found myself muttering to my typewriter, "My God, Remington, I think I can write." And I suddenly had a concept of a story featuring a psychopathic heroin smuggler seeking vengeance against a prosecutor who was himself addicted to heroin. And so I soon learned that a writer's life was not always a constant party. That awareness came to me when I was flown to Toronto to be presented with the prize money. Now, alcoholic drinks back in those days were free in the steerage compartment of airplanes, and I was in a celebratory mood. And arriving in Toronto, I was spirited into a hotel salon by a horde of publicists whose task was to groom me for a press conference the next day. And I needed grooming. Determined not to look like a stuffy lawyer, I was in jeans and I grew my hair below my shoulders. And everyone else, of course, was in suits, and the men with ties and women with long dresses. And unlike me, they were relatively sober. So I was immediately subjected to a grilling into my background. I think they anticipated some slick, manicured trial lawyer. The head publicist finally crept away to the phone to confer with the publisher, and I overheard her say, "I'm not sure about this guy. He looks a little West Coast." And I will leave it at that. Thank you.